When image is more important than relationship in families, people don't look after each other. They look after the image. So in England, say the princess dies, and it's about what's the image that we're going to portray? What are we going to show? It isn't about relationship. It isn't about grief and grieving. In fact, mostly it seems like they just separate into their own silos and they're disconnected, just working on looking like they're royal. And it seems to me that Harry is looking much more like a human being. But in families where this happens, and I can relate a little bit, not to the wealth or the castles, but I can relate to because my mom died when I was a teenager very suddenly one day, very abruptly one day. And my dad didn't have a funeral, didn't talk about it. It was just over. And I didn't know any better. I was an immature teenager who didn't know anything about grieving and didn't learn. And it was many years before I ended up having somebody help me grieve the loss of my mother. And she was the one that tied the family together. She was the one connected with relationship. And so when I see Prince Harry, he had to heal. He had to learn how to grieve. And he wasn't going to learn that from his family, because they weren't grieving, or they didn't appear to grieve, and they certainly didn't talk with each other about how to go through that process, which is sacred. It's really important. It's critical to grieve well. In fact, when we grieve deeply, it's only because we have loved deeply. And so denying that grief is unhealthy, and it's not even good for the relationship with the person, the mother in this case, that died. It's like we should be grateful that we feel so much, because it also means that we've loved so much. And so in families that aren't comfortable with vulnerability or grief, or only concerned with image, or mostly concerned with image, somebody who tries to be vulnerable and open up about it feels like a big threat, because they are dependent on the British people supporting them. They have to be liked. And so when they experience something that feels like a threat, like Harry talking, it's like the end of the world.